Utility Authority to order. Madam Secretary, roll call.
Yes, sir. Director Robert Skinner,
Here.
Director Craig Carter,
Here.
Vice Chair David Haslam,
Here.
and Chair Eric Lawson.
Here. And now our invocation, please.
Father God, we thank you for letting us unite in a country that still has freedom to have these kinds of meetings, even though we may all not agree. We hope to get to the same resolution. Please protect everyone here and protect this building. It's Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair Lawson, our next order of business is the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we adopt the agenda as stated.
I'll second.
Okay, public comment?
Yes, I would, as far as the agenda, the consent agenda, I think we should get the contract on the agenda so we could discuss it. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but
No, you're not very loud. I'm trying to get their attention.
Microphone?
Yeah, you're on, but you're not very loud.
Okay.
so.
Yes, I would like to suggest, in respect to the consent agenda, that we get this massive contract on the regular agenda, particularly the particulars that may not even be in the agenda in terms of compensation to be paid out of ratepayer money to Mr. Bolarski. Thank you, sir.
Chuck Ross. It's been a month. Good evening. I concur with Mr. Conish. The agenda needs to, the consent agenda, the contract on the consent agenda needs to be pulled off so we can discuss some of the particulars, such as the 20 weeks of severance, which seems like to start off the bat, the 104 hours of paid time off that he gets from inception, et cetera. So then that should be just pulled off and discussed so the public can comment on it. And I'd like to hear the board talk about it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, authority members, thank you. Name is Bobby Murmer, coordinator of the Alachua County Labor Coalition. And I agree with the previous two speakers that the CEO's contract should be taken off of consent. This is a deviation from where the utility has been heading over the past few months. Belt tightening is required of almost every arm of this utility, yet we see an obscene expansion in the general manager's salary, and I think at the very least that deserves an open debate with public comment and as well as board input. Thank you.
My name is Donald Shepard. I'm a People's Representative. I took that choice and took about myself. What I came to speak about is this here is the contract in here. There's several entities in the contract that are not in the best interest of the people. So I'll probably speak about that later. But Mr. Carnage is nailing it right on the head. This is something that's been ignored through the City Commission, through this meeting here. And why play with GRU, with the City Commission, excuse me? Why play with the City Commission when they have been kicking the can down the road for over 50-some years, and GRU and others have been having to take and play catch-up with their money, not the city's money. So the city commissioners are the ones, and the managers are the ones that took and made this trouble become. Our public works, our parks and recreation, our CRA, these are all items that need to be looked at. And why is it that they think they're like a piggy bank, like they have GRU? And so we need to resolve this. And if I would have been, as a Republican, voted in we would never be in this position because we had the money in the coffer to pay this bill upfront as many as other bills that the city has concurred. And why concur these bills when you got the revenue to take and pay these bills upfront? The city is on welfare or what? And I don't know how much time I got. But I wanted to take and say that it is sad to see the document here before us and all the money that is due to GRU and other entities. And that's all I have for this moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Roberta Gastmeyer. First, want to thank GRU and all of its employees for the past few days of getting electricity on really quickly. I really appreciate it. I would like to ask you to pull from the consent agenda the item regarding the interim CEO GM. I find it very weird. As we know, the word of the week is weird, and I find it weird that once again you're voting to perhaps spend ratepayer money to provide an unvetted insider with a sweetheart deal. It's weird that while over the past 10 months that this body has been in charge, the city has been forced to cut services and raise property taxes due to your votes, and GRU electric rates have not gone down 1 penny, and they're not going to go down again next year. It's weird that despite your legal mandate, as you so often remind us, is to not consider social, political, or ideological concerns, you seem to time and time again to take actions designed to be a political poke in the eye to the city commission and by extension, the citizens who elected them. I hope you'll pull this item from the agenda and let the public speak on this. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to also echo Ms. Gastmeyer's appreciation for the GRU crews and teams and linemen getting out this past couple of days. We lost power for a short time, and they were out there and got it all fixed for us. I am also in support for pulling from the consent agenda Mr. Bolarski's contract negotiations. Mr. Lawson, as chair, you've been in private industry, but Mr. Carter, Mr. Bolarski, and a lot of other people in this room know that it is standard operating procedure for these to be very publicly discussed and vetted. When I was on the city commission, we had 2 charter officers. The general manager was a charter officer at the time, but when I was on the city commission, we had a national search to replace 2 different charter officers. The national search, these candidates were vetted publicly. In addition to meeting privately with each city commissioner, we also had public meetings, salary negotiations, and even for every year when salaries were being up for discussion for our charter officers, it was all done publicly. It was never on consent agenda. So the proper thing is to pull this from the consent agenda and have a public discussion about this. Thank you.
I'm sorry, may I have your name, please?
I'm sorry, I didn't say that? I am so sorry. Susan Botcher.
Thank you.
Yes.
For the record, Tyler Forrest. Well, what you have on your consent agenda is a disgrace. This board was supposedly created to rein in spending, yet frankly, all you've done is spend like drunken sailors. Your first action was to cancel the audits. I guess we can see why. You then hired the law firm that you'd already chosen outside of the sunshine, and you did it on a limited source contract that you've now extended. So I'm pretty sure you're breaking rules on that one as well, because again, you didn't put it out to bid. And now you're going to make the former GM, who just lost his race for mayor, if you wonder what the city thinks about him, the highest paid employee in Gainesville history. That's going to be your legacy if you vote for that agenda. Think about that, because I promise you, that's a reputation that's going to live longer than your terms on this board.
Kim Popejoy, owner and customer of GRU for close to half a century. And The previous board, I asked them all to resign regularly. You eventually had to. I'm asking you now to resign before you do a consent agenda that gives an opportunity to, without public comment, approve a corrupt contract. The gentleman before spoke about your reputations. That's why I asked you to resign before, it's to save your personal reputations. I ask you to do so now. Resign, save your personal reputations. Do not leave this corrupt contract on a consent agenda. Thank you.
Chairman Lawson, members, I come here from Tallahassee. I'm Mike Murtha. I work for Speaker Pro Tem Chuck Clemens. And I came here to thank you for your efforts over the last 6, 7, 8 months. There was a reason why HB 1645 was done. I mean, there was a reason. It was calls from to our office from individuals who were in peril. We had to do more constituent caseworks on individuals and single mothers and folks over the barrel not being able to make it. And meanwhile, we could see the GFT rising every single year. And so finally, the delegation said enough. Now, it was clear the delineation of the two factions of the individuals who wanted to rein in the spending, who wanted to get GRU under control for the ratepayers, so that their livelihoods could be salvaged, some of their businesses be salvaged. And so we caution you on behalf of the Speaker Pro Tem, and you know this, and I'm just saying this for the record, to remember which side and the individuals who were sincerely and early on concerned about reining in spending, and then the latecomers who, for political expedience and whatnot, suddenly become the sharp-penciled accountants wanting to round down the penny. Ed Bilarski has been spectacular. He has been an institutional resource that is unmatched, that you can do 1,000 searches all over, but he's the widget. When my Explorer solenoid goes out, I'd sure like to buy a cheaper one that's, off market in a Toyota, but it just doesn't fit. It doesn't work. And so on behalf of Speaker Pro Tem Clemens, and I would say for the majority of the delegation who voted for 1645, we thank you for your diligence. We thank you for your willingness to serve. And we thank your judgment on picking such an outstanding general manager. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing the public comments over, back to the board.
Oh, sorry. Just for clarification, Mr. Bilarski was vetted. I was actually on the commission when we hired him. We did a national search, and he did go through all the public process. Throughout the time at GRU, as far as I know, he served it well. The employees were excited about him. The middle management was excited about him. At some point, I believe they became a loggerhead between some of the commissioners and Mr. Bilarski, and his time was ended. I know he's been referred to as a politician. No disrespect, that's the last thing he is. He ran for mayor to try to help the city. Back to the contract. It is $23,000 difference between, the pay between Mr. Cunningham's contract and Mr. Bilarski's. As far as him being the highest paid person in the city, I'll have to take your word for that. But I will tell you, since Mr. Bilarski's been in charge, I've had some conversations with him, and they focus on how do we retain our employees? Not how do we retain our executives, how do we retain our employees? And Mr. Bilarski said it's something that he has been working on. Has there been changes at the top? Yes, without a doubt. He also, some of the employees that I met with, which I did go out and meet with a small handful of employees on the job sites, and they were concerned about insurances. That is something that Mr. Bilarski actually stated to me. So as far as him being vetted and being qualified for this job, bar none, I have no problem. I will say, typically, as Ms. Botcher did point out, anytime we did something like this, it was vetted out in public for public contact, and also for board input so people can see our methodologies. So I'm going to let, everybody speak, but I have no problem pulling it off the consent. But want to see what the other board members think.
I'm in 100% agreement with Mr. Carter. My time at the city, I actually saw the process that Mr. Bilarski went through, and he was fully vetted at that point in time. And I have no issue with pulling it off of the consent agenda as well, if that is what the board chooses to do and have further discussion. But I am confident in our choice from the previous meetings.
To act like Ed's new to this is ridiculous. He's 40 some odd years in the industry. He's not new. He's older than some of the people speaking. His time in the job is older than some of the people speaking. I don't see a need to waste time. I wasn't part of the contract negotiations. It looks pretty standard to me, though. So I will obviously, we can talk about it, but I think he did a good job, and I think we could just move forward with Eric personally, so.
Mr. Chair, if I could weigh in on it. 286 was a legislative change in a couple of years ago, and it states that the public shall have the right to speak on any measure in a public meeting. And my concern would be from a conservative approach that the citizenry feel they don't have the ability to talk on this measure. So under Section 286, I would suggest we pull it from the consent agenda as well.
Then I'd like to make a motion, we pull it from consent, sir.
I will second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to amend the agenda to pull it off the consent agenda.
Yes, sir.
And make it
And then
another item.
Put it a line item, yes, sir.
Do we need to have public comment on the motion?
I think
Yes.
you already had your public comment.
Yeah.
I think you're fine.
Okay, so all in favor of the agenda with the amendment to pull it off the consent agenda?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Thank you. Chair Wilson, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Approval from June 26, 2024 meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, we approve the minutes as stated.
I'll second that motion.
This is a copy of each contract. I figure if we discuss it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Public comment? Okay, no public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, authority members. Bobby Murmer, coordinator of the Alachua County Labor Coalition. Not really speaking on approval of the minutes, but for clarity, could we know where on the agenda that item was moved to?
Right after the consent agenda.
Oh, all right, thank you.
My name's Donald Shepard, and my comment said that I think this is a righteous thing that you're doing. And Mr. Carnish and the other gentleman had mentioned that we should have had the opportunity to speak on this before, but the city commission wouldn't allow it. And this here needs to stop. We need to move the 3 minutes to 5 minutes at our city commission so that people can speak their peace of mind. 3 minutes, you don't get a chance to take and bring up things that you have on your notes and things that you might have talked about. Mr. Borowski started out right. I will back him on that. But what I'm going to speak about later is about the DVD that I have that shows on the DVD where $98,000 was supposed to take and go to every bill payer of the GRU bill payers, and never happened. Why? Because it was stopped by the city commission. And so making this movement towards amending this agenda, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing as no more public comment, back to the board for comment.
Just point of clarification, it was stated in the minutes, but I want to clarify. Some folks said that I said the first thing I did when I was reappointed was meet Mr. Bilarski. What I said is when I was first appointed, I was never unappointed because My resignation said date certain or when the governor reappoints. I was reappointed, so I continuously served on this board as far as I was concerned, and I did not state the first thing I did when I was reappointed. Mr. Bielarski and I met when I was first appointed by the governor's office the first go-around, the next meeting after the next day after the first meeting, the only time we met in person about that. So just clarification.
Any other comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. Chair Lawson, our next agenda item is the chair comments.
Okay, thank you. I want to first start out with just saying thank you to all the GRU employees for the amazing work during and after the storm. The employees of GRU always step up into the fray to make sure that we have safe utilities for our homes and for all of our businesses and our hospitals in town. So really, thank you for all that you do every day, and especially during these really difficult times. You're very much appreciated throughout our community. So I want to start with that. The only other thing I wanted to comment on was I wanted to explain the process that I went through in working with Mr. Bielarski in establishing an employment contract. So first of all, I engaged our Human Resources Department, and they provided me an executive salary survey from Korn Ferry, which is a national firm that provides executive compensation. And in that compensation, they give you a median salary range, which is they surveyed medium-sized utilities across the United States, and they gave me a median, an upper level, and a lower level for salary, which is generally the process that you go through in establishing an executive salary. The median range they provided me was $343,000. The upper range for the survey was over $400,000, and the lower range was approximately $260,000. At the second step that I did was I looked at Mr. Bielarski's original compensation 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and I rolled that forward using a 3% inflation factor. And that's how we ended up with $332,000, was we rolled his previous salary forward 2 years. And so in comparing that to the median, the contract is within about 3% of the median range for medium-sized utilities across the United States. So that's the process that I undertook in partnership with Human Resources. We also revised the contract to reorient it to the Utilities Authority. Before, all the language oriented the contract to the City Commission. And then we asked Folds Walker to review the contract for comments as well. So we've had it reviewed by legal. I worked in partnership with Human Resources. And then, of course, I worked with Mr. Bielarski on the final parts of the contract. And then finally, what I would say with this is that Mr. Bielarski is a proven utilities expert. He proved himself when he was here before. He is a known figure, and not only are we tasked with running a great utility with safe utilities, but the most fiscally way possible. I think it's important that we also have stability. The utility has been through a lot over the last several years, and I believed that Mr. Bielarski would provide the most stable environment rather than going out for a national search. In my experience in hospital executive work, I have worked in the past to recruit interim leaders, both physicians and hospital executives. And I can tell you, an interim leader, generally you use an agency, and an agency is going to cost you 50 to 100% more than the salary of the executive that you ultimately will recruit. So had we gone out to the market and brought in a true interim leader, we would pay 50 to 100% more during that interim time. So I believed that this was the most fiscally responsible process for establishing what I felt like was a fair salary for Mr. Bielarski. So I hadn't had, obviously this is my only venue to tell you that, but I wanted you to understand the process that I went through to establish the salary for that. And so that concludes my comments as chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the general public comment. Just to remind you, this is for items that are not on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, Jim Conish, I have a very short presentation here. This is a prepared statement. Critical remedial action required by HB 1645 remains thwarted. HB 1645 requires a flow of funds analysis. I realize, Mr. Blarski, this is not his favorite metric. This is mandated. And within that analysis, you're supposed to identify the SOA losses. They were discovered by the Auditor General in Finding 3. This is an ongoing problem where the relationships, the financial associations between GRU and the city are unfavorable for GRU ratepayers. And the service level agreement is broadly defined. So while we're paying attention to the amount of the direct transfer, the SOA losses just continue. And they're really about as big as the direct transfer you're going to make next year, and they were even bigger the previous year. So unless you address SOA losses, GRU ratepayers will not get a single dime of relief. Now, I hate to bring this up, but the second page, these are all the GRU electric rates. And the mind-blowing savings from the purchase of the biomass plant has left us with increases between 11 and 14%, sir. In your hospital, 46%. There's 6 large power users. I don't even know if you noticed it, but they hammered you. You can afford it. A lot of people out here can't. So there's no mind-blowing savings. The biomass plant is not a BMW. It's a pig in a poke. I did an analysis. We're still paying out almost $40 million a year, only now we're making more than the minimum payments, called debt defeasance. And what you don't understand is this gentleman can spin a wheel and allocate that burden on any one of 5 systems. And I'm talking about not only the direct transfer, but the debt defeasance and the SOA losses. They're here, but we don't have a number for that, okay? So because of the incredible mismanagement of the electric system, on a percentage basis, what the electric system pays is the lowest. Poor old GRUCOM, losing millions, is eating biomass debt and SOA losses in an amount we don't even know, and all that. And of course they're not making money. Plus the city doesn't bother to pay them, for a lot of the services. So the final thing I gave you is in my house, if I don't use anything, I get a bill for $110.92 that I'm hammered with the highest electric rates in the state.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My name's Donald Shepard, and what I want to talk about now in this public comment, I brought the DVD that proves that 3 years ago, when Ed Borowski was the next CEO of the city of Gainesville, he made the promise at the city commission meeting that this money be delegated to the people. Never got done. This is what the city's done throughout. I don't know what the city agreement is with Mr. Borowski, but I've had good standards from Mr. Borowski, the good standards from Mr. Carter, and Mr. Carnish, Debbie Martinez, her husband, and numbers of people have stood at this podium telling GRU, telling the city commission what they would suggest to do. This biomass, as Debbie Martinez has said, is a conflagro, if I'm saying it right. And this here should never have been. The issues of paying it back, great gentlemen like, what the heck's his name? Jim Carnish and Nathan Scott. They were educated people that had brought the answers to the city commission, brought the answers to y'all, how to take and resolve this, but nobody's listening. That's why we have high utility bills. We have to go to food banks. Even myself, I have to go to food banks to survive. This is not right. Rent. There's an item in here about rent. That should never have been either. The raising of the rental apartments and the number of the contracts that the city has brought in to take and build more housing should never happen. And so I got more to say, but I don't have it fresh on my mind. And as I hear Mr. Carnish and more educated person of this matter, I will revolve my time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter, and Mr. Borowski and staff for all you do.
Chuck Ross. First of all, I want to commend the GRU for the service that they did in the storm. We also lost power a couple of times. It was restored fairly rapidly, so good job there. I'm going to bring up something I brought up before about the alleged $68 million in losses. I've prepared an analysis that was handed out to you guys, and I did a public records request to determine how the $67 or $68 million was arrived at. So the first thing I noticed immediately off the bat was that for 2018, there's a $13 million error in the amount of income for that year, because the 2018 financial statements, which originally stated they had made $17 million, were restated upward by $13 million, so the number ended up being $30 million. So right off the bat, you have to deduct $13 million from the $68 million. And I continue to maintain that the capital contributions from third parties, which are treated as an expense elsewhere in the financial statements, that revenue must be considered. And that's another $13 million. So now we're up to $30 million. And the last thing is, if you take the last 2 years, which have been excluded for some reason for 22 and 23, you'll see that in 20, there was actually a $20 million excess of money over and above the transfer. This is after I'm considering capital contributions. And for the next year, there was a $17 million excess. So the net is 3. So there's another $3 million. So it's a total of $33 million that needs to come off the top of the $67 million. I mean, just to be clear, I don't agree with the concept of how you're applying this, but if you're going to apply it, we need to use the right numbers. And those numbers are based on the financial statements. I've given you most of the data there. I didn't want to waste too much paper, but it's sufficient enough for you to, should be able to figure out the 13 million's crystal clear. I'm going to run out of time in a few minutes. I'm going to again express my concerns about when Mr. Bolarski was chairperson of the board. He was able to make some disparaging and allegations against the former manager, Tony Cunningham, and I believe influenced the board sufficiently to terminate him, knowing that he was likely going to be available to fill his spot. And I consider that a tremendous conflict. And I don't know how to express it any more seriously than that, because he was in a position where he could influence the board, like I said, and therefore take the role. And now he's sitting there going to receive a $330,000 contract on an annual basis, plus benefits, plus the PTO, and we'll get into that when we get to the contract. But thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and since revision of the consent agenda, the only item is to discuss the 2024-598 annual HVAC preventative maintenance and repair.
On consent.
That's on consent.
It's on consent, there's no discussion.
Yes, sir.
So we need a motion to pass the consent agenda.
Okay, I apologize. I thought we wrapped that up into the agenda because we pulled something off. Okay.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda with just the item 2024-598 on it.
I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Public comment? Seeing none, back to the board. Any additional comments? None? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes?
Thank you. We moved, you voted to move the CEO contract to this next item on the agenda. So we will, it's time to discuss the 2024-558 contract for GRU CEO. The recommendation is the GRU authority approve as written.
So I think all the board members have been had availability to the contract and reviewed that, so.
Both of them, Your Honor. Your Honor, Your Chair. Sorry. Actually, I was sent Mr. Cunningham's contract also. I asked for it just so I had them side by side.
Okay.
So I apologize, Your Honor.
So I gave my comments during my chair's comments, and so I don't think we need to ask Mr. Bilarski to have any explanation at this point. So I believe I would entertain a motion, and then that will allow us to do public comment. Is that? Does anyone like to make a motion?
Yes, sir. Apologize, getting back into where I can see the paperwork here. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the negotiated contract with the CEO, General Manager, 2024-558 as stated.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Public comment.
Mr. Chair, Jim Conish, under the totality of the circumstances, what really deeply troubled me was to take a vacation while we're in a situation where we may not even know if the authority has any legal validity. And if you get into that space, anything could happen. The bondholders could say, this is a clown car. We want our money back. After all, they've been trampling the bond covenants with their pirating of GRU money directly and indirectly. That's not contemplated when you loan an entity hundreds of millions of dollars, that it's just a political ATM. And it also can affect the tax-exempt status of your massive debt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, authority members, Bobby Murmer, coordinator of the Alachua County Labor Coalition. I urge you to vote no, and the Alachua County Labor Coalition urges you to vote no on this motion. In just a few short days, last I checked, we've gotten well over 100 emails in. Several of those addresses, mind you, are outside city limits. I did just a random sample and plugged them into a map that included the city limits. So one of the things that this authority loves to brag about is representing the interests of ratepayers outside the city limits. And whether you live inside the city limits or outside the city limits, nobody wants this. We have been told that the utility needs to tighten its belt, that the city needs to tighten its belt. And what this contract tells the community, ratepayers inside the city and outside the city, is that austerity is only necessary if your name is not Ed Bilarski. If your name is Ed Bilarski, the rules do not apply to you. You can have a sweetheart deal, the highest salary in the history of the city of Gainesville. It's obscene, this austerity for thee, not for me attitude. Just vote no and use the savings to drastically reduce the CEO's exorbitant $332,000 salary, make the CEO interim and perform an open and transparent national search, remove the CEO's severance pay in the event that the authority is abolished in November, and use the savings to lower our GRU rates. Thank you.
Chuck Ross, vote no on the contract as it is. There were a couple of things that I had particular concerns about. Right off the bat, he's going to get 104 hours of PTO. Further, he's going to get 20 weeks of severance if he's fired without cause. Now, as was just mentioned, if this referendum is successful and this board goes away, he's not going to have, I don't believe, he's going to barely have worked 20 weeks, and he's going to get another 20 weeks if this whole thing is extinguished. So at a minimum, what you should probably do is put him on probation, like you would normally do, even though he's not, I understand that he obviously is not a new employee to GRU, he's coming back. But having said that, because of these items that are going to kick in immediately, he stands to, be substantially benefited in November if the referendum is successful. And maybe that's why these things were put in there, to benefit him somehow. It's completely unfair. Personally, what I think you should do is he should get $1 for a year, like Lee Iacocca, because he's trying to resurrect the corporation, and that'll show, first of all, that my original concerns about him trying to step in and make benefit to himself, self-benefit, will go away, because he's working as he was going to work on the authority with no pay or for $1 as a contract. He's also, I assume, collecting retirement pay from when he was fired. So at a minimum, you should at least consider that in reducing his pay if you're going to go forward with this. But I would start with 6 months probation, and these additional benefits for PTO and severance are suspended. That way, at least we know we'll get 6 months out of them, or you won't be here anymore. One of the two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Donald Shepherd. Once again, Mr. Carnage had brought to the table what the do's and don'ts should be, and I don't hear anybody listening. Also, we need a PDF of this meeting, of every GRU meeting that concurred, so that the public, as Mr. Carnage pointed out, so the public has knowledge of what is occurring. Not everybody has a tape recorder or a system to take and record these meetings from the TV. You do not get the information from the TV that you get coming to this meeting. Also, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know that was decided on in behalf of Mr. Borowski, Mr. Carter, and other people that wasn't educated brought to the public's knowledge. This here, how can you educate the public if you don't have a PDF or you don't have the proper paperwork, as Mr. Carnage pointed out? This is something that we have been hammering for years. Great people, even Miss Joel Beatty had brought for years to the city commission meeting information, and it got kicked aside. Got kicked out of the city hall, just like I did. And accusations being put upon me of me threatening Mrs. Sacco. No, I don't threaten nobody. If I did, then it would be. But this is something that we need to decline until the agreement that you had made earlier of reviewing the agenda and then bringing it back for review. And that's what I say. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Roberta Gastmeyer. I just want to say I completely agree with Mr. Ross. $1, at least through November, sounds really good. Wait until November, see what happens. After that time, renegotiate. Thank you.
A couple points. So Tyler Forrest for the record. So first, I hope every GRU employee watching asks the four of you for a raise now. Every single one of them, every time they see you, because you obviously don't have a problem giving it. Also, the fact that he's already taken his vacation that you're giving him under the contract. So tell me, are you already paying him under the contract too before you vote on it? That seems pretty unethical to me. The true purpose of this board is finally becoming clear, and it's being shown to everybody, which is for Ed and Chuck Clemens to rip off the city of Gainesville on their way out of office. And you're going to be complicit in that if you vote for this. And again, I promise you, you have to live here after this. Chuck Clemens doesn't live in Gainesville. He doesn't even live in Newberry. He doesn't even know the middle school that he's represented for how many years? But you're going to take advice from him. He doesn't care about you. And what's even more interesting is if you want to hear a really good defense about the GFT, you only have to look at Ed's Facebook page. Because in 2018, he had a totally different view. Thanks.
Susan Botcher. I think it is a good idea to table this until after the November vote on the referendum. It just seems kind of weird and out of standard practice to be rushing this through now and in the way that it's being done. I think it's a really, really bad look for the authority. And of course, it's been said before that this reflects on all of you personally as well, you know, how things get reported in the media. There's no reason why this needs to be voted on today. I am pretty confident in assuming that Mr. Bolarski is not looking for jobs elsewhere. You're not going to lose him. He plans to stay here. And he made that clear after he lost his job last time as general manager. He didn't leave, he stayed here. He apparently loves this community. So I don't think that you're going to lose him. I do believe that it just is a much better look if you delay the contract negotiation until November.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Shapiro. I agree with the aforesaid comments. I think you should rest on your laurels for a while and wait for this final. After things shake down and GRU seems on solid ground with the authority or whatever, then I think the time comes for choosing more than an interim. Thank you.
Okay, no more public comment, bringing it back to the board. I gave my explanation and description, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I don't really have any questions, Mr. Chair. I just have a statement. I'm not in favor of waiting until November because, quite frankly, I don't think that's a valid thing to do. I personally, you know, I look out there and it says, owned by the people it serves. So if everybody wants to let everybody in the county and everything vote on this referendum, I'd listen. But it's not owned by the people it serves if they can't vote on it. So that was part of the reason this House bill was put in place. You know, GRU went outside its service area, made a great decision and helped a lot of people. But in doing so, it bought up Clay Electric. Those people who are on Clay Electric lost their ability right then and there. So I'm in favor of voting on this now. I have full confidence, Mr. Bolarski. Just for the record, I know one person stated that he manipulated the board in any way. If you watch a Monday meeting, he ticked me off, is what he did. And I made a decision the next morning when I talked to Mr. Cunningham to make the vote to let him go because it was not going to end until he was gone and we had a new direction at GRU. In thinking that on Wednesday, I thought the person I trusted when I hired him back when I was a city commissioner is the man I still trust, the man I still went to for advice. And I said, if there's a problem, can I count on you? So I stick behind my decisions and I'm proud of my decisions and I'm ready to move forward in this contract, sir.
Yeah, I'm ready to move forward, voting on the contract. I mean, I love hearing the comments. And I think it's great. I definitely want to hear your opinions. I'm not a big fan of being bullied. Not a big fan of, like, you guys talk about Ed being abusive. That's all that everyone in this room's done tonight, just abusive. And you're taking your own information and you're taking these emails and all these things, and you're putting your own spin onto it, much like you claim Ed does. And it's just kind of a waste of time, if we're to be honest with each other. I mean, it really is. So, in my opinion, we should just go ahead and vote on it. I like the contract as it stands. And, sorry, can we get a little decorum? I like the contract as it stands. We could address some other things, like, at some point. I mean, I'm interested in maybe readjusting the GFT again and maybe abolishing it altogether. And instead of transferring funds to the city, we transfer it back to every individual person. And then they can do whatever they like with that funds. You know what I mean? Maybe that's a possibility. So we can quit talking about those numbers. So we just give it right to the people who pay the electric bill, right? So instead of transferring it to the city, maybe we just transfer it back to every one of us who pays. And then you can do whatever you like with the funds. That's a possibility for the future. Something I'm going to study on a little bit and see what I think about that. But I'm totally fine with moving forward tonight and voting how we're going to, voting on it personally.
I'm in agreement with the other representatives up here. When we're talking about a $23,000 differential and between Mr. Bilarski and Mr. Cunningham, and then these emails that we get saying that that money should be going to the ratepayers to lower the rates. Well, $23,000 is not going to lower anyone. You're not going to notice that on your bill whatsoever. The 3% per year, that's standard across the board. The PTO issue, that is typical in any contract that I've seen when you're talking about an executive position. They are always including PTOU from the get-go. The severance package, same. Otherwise, we wouldn't get people to come out here. And as been stated by the previous authority board and the current board, those that were on there, they went and were looking. No one, we would not get a quality candidate in here that has the experience, as some of you had mentioned, the love for the community. He's still here. He didn't leave town and go accept another job somewhere else. He understands the issues. He understands the public. And he is still reporting to the board. We are still his bosses. So I'm prepared to move forward with that. And I agree with you. I have an issue with organizations putting out an email and people just copy and paste it. Yes, we had received over 100. I opened every one of them. Less than 10% put their own thought into it. Less than 10%. And then you claim that it's the community. I don't see a huge community outcry over this. So I am also prepared to move forward at this point.
Mr. Chair, if I just may, there were some comments that were made and some questions about the terms of the contract, and I do just want to reiterate to the whole board that our office did review this contract several times and have no concerns regarding those issues.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, time for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the CEO comments.
Well, that's quick to jump in on this. Thank you, Board. I appreciate the support. I really appreciate the support. Really, this is, my only comments were going to be about the restoration effort. As Chair Lawson has said, this is all about GRU employees. Although, let me say one thing. It was made a comment about every GRU employee will now ask for a raise. Our rank and file are being underpaid right now.
Yep.
And frankly, they have talked to me about it. And one of the things that has been at the top of my mind in some of the decisions that have been made has been to create a pool of money that can be directed toward the rank and file. So it's just particularly ironic that we have the Alachua Labor Coalition coming and speaking about this when this is all about helping, the rank and file.
They already left.
Okay. So, but, in my short tenure, we're looking on a savings this year of somewhere just under $4 million that we can isolate for some of the folks that are underpaid and other initiatives within the organization. That's been part of the goal. So I'm very proud of being able to do that. Look, we talked to the rating agencies upon my reentry in as the CEO. I think it was very positive. I was familiar with them. They were looking very positively at the reduction in the 2025 budget of $12 million a year in operating expenses and $20 million in CapEx. And all these things go to benefit the folks that work here. So one of them even used the word transformational. So I'm very positive about the future. But getting back to the restoration efforts, we had a record amount of down power lines. We had 89 of them. And actually went on a local radio show and, told some folks, hey, if they see the power lines that are down, call this number. So when I got back to system control, they're like, thanks a lot, Ed. We got 89 of these. And they weren't all ours, but thank heaven, people were looking at this saying, hey, we need to call GRU. We had 19 poles that were down, broken, shattered, trees falling down, pulling them down, crews working 16-hour shifts. I mean, we're built for this. And I'm just so proud of the folks that were out there restoring power. And let's not forget the folks on the water wastewater side. Some of our wastewater facilities were carrying double to triple the amount of collection that they typically would. That takes a lot of effort to man those stations, to do the things that you have to do. And we were sending crews out to make sure the almost 200 lift stations that we have were being maintained as well. So they're all courteous. You would go into neighborhoods and people would come out the doors, thank them. They thought a couple times I was one of the workers until they kind of looked at this and they looked at the shoes and they went, nah, you're not one of these guys. So it was really an extraordinary experience, and the community ought to be proud of the GRU symbol that is worn on each one of these shirts. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the attorney comments.
No comment from me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate the brevity.
That was quick and painless. The next item on the agenda is Resolution 2024-557, resolution authorizing the CEO and certain other authorized officers to negotiate and execute upcoming potential financial transactions subject to the prescribed execution parameters and timeframes. Let me remind you, this is a roll call vote. I will read the entire title into the record. A resolution of the Gainesville Regional Utilities Authority, a unit of city government of the City of Gainesville, Florida, authorizing on behalf of the City of Gainesville, Florida, pursuant to the power and authority of the authority set forth in the city charter, the refunding and/or cash defeasance of certain outstanding utility system debt, authorizing the payment of related costs, and delegating the authority to determine certain matters in connection therewith, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of one or more escrow deposit agreements with respect thereto, and delegating the authority to determine certain matters in connection therewith, approving the selection of an escrow agent, approving the selection of a verification agent, authorizing the payment of related costs, and delegating the authority to determine certain matters in connection therewith, authorizing amendments to the credit agreement with Bank of America, N.A., to provide a substitute index rate upon the phase-out of the Bloomberg Short-Term Bank Yield Index based on the advice of the financial advisor, authorizing officials and employees of the city and the authority to take all other actions deemed necessary or advisable in connection therewith, authorizing entering into a forward-starting qualified hedging contract to synthetically fix the interest rate on a future series of variable rate refunding bonds, authorizing officials and employees of the city and the authority to take all other actions deemed necessary or advisable in connection therewith, authorizing taking certain actions in connection with the sale of the TRS and defeasance and/or redemption of associated bonds, authorizing the waiver of the tax covenants in the TRS agreement, ratify and approve the extension of certain outstanding revolving lines of credit, providing certain other matters in connection therewith, and providing an effective date.
With that, we have Mr. Mark Benton here to go through some of the transactions. I would just open up with, this is something we did to great success back in 2020, where I think the Budget Finance and Accounting Group has shown great vision in working with our financial analyst, PFM, to look at future conditions in the marketplace and when redemptions are necessary within our bond portfolio. And think of it as, looking at buying stocks, or that's not what we're doing, but you set a trade parameter for when you want to buy them or when you want to get out of a position. We're doing that with our own debt to our own benefit, rather than have to wait for a market condition, then try to get everyone to come together and say, oh, we need to do it now, and we may have missed the opening type of thing. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Benton, who was responsible at that point, too.
Just waiting for the presentation to come up.
I was trying to give you the opportunity to get that loaded up there, Mark, but I didn't want any dead air time, that I'd have to continue to talk and not have to,
I appreciate that.
We don't pay him by the word.
I was just going to say that the reading of the title will take up more time than the presentation itself. So, Mr. Chair, we're looking at executing a number of financial transactions in the upcoming months. They basically fall into three groups. One is we're going to try to defease or redeem some debt that's dictated by some existing agreements as well as by some policy directives that exist today. We're going to amend some existing agreements so that we can stay consistent with changing market conditions. And there's one opportunity for us to potentially generate some debt service savings that we're going to try to execute. We want to be as nimble and flexible as possible. So as the CEO mentioned, we're bringing all these transactions forth to you in a single resolution, and basically asking that you provide the CEO with the authority within prescribed execution parameters and timelines to negotiate and execute when we believe it's in the best interest of the utility. As he mentioned, we meet once a month. We may have a market window that we want to hit. If we have to come back and bring it to you at that point in time, that window may go away. He referenced we did this in 2020. We brought a number of transactions to the City Commission at that point under a single resolution. We ended up being able to consummate 7 of those structuring transactions in a single year, and it saved the utility about $134 million in debt service over that period. So that's the intent here today. So to start off with the debt defeasance or redemption, as I think everybody's aware, we sold the trunk radio system to the county this year. As part of that agreement, we committed to taking the sales proceeds, which was about $8 million, and defeasing debt that was associated with the trunking radio system acquisition and construction. And so the proposed resolution has language in there that authorizes us to defease or redeem debt associated with the 6 series that you see up here, which all have portions that are attributable to the trunk radio system. In addition, there's some language in there that authorizes both the county and the authority to amend or waive some tax covenants that were in the agreement that were associated with the trunk radio system. As has been discussed quite a bit in the last year, we have a debt management policy that includes a section on reducing debt, and we have a debt reduction plan that we hope to use the resources that are listed on this slide to bring down our net debt by about $395 million over the next decade. This resolution authorizes the use of the funds identified from those strategies in fiscal '24 to defease up to $30 million of certain maturities of the two series, our 2017A, which is the fixed portion of the financing that we use to acquire Deerhaven Renewables, and then in water, wastewater, and GRUCOM, our 2012B. I'm sorry, this is a little bit difficult to see, but this is just basically a summary. What we've got up there is we have what we had budgeted or intended to fees during fiscal '24, which is about $62 million. And to the right of that, you see what we project we believe now we'll be able to defease in '24, and it's about $79 million. And the biggest pieces are the $8 million from the trunk radio system, which weren't included in those original numbers, as well as we defeased the outstanding principal of our 2005 Series C and 2006 Series A. And so we believe we're going to be able to defease about $17 million more than we estimated. And then that on the right-hand side with the yellow caption there, our debt to capitalization ratio was a little over 86% at the end of fiscal '23. If we're able to reduce the debt as we have up here, that number is going to go down to about 84% by the end of this fiscal year. So moving on to the section on amending or modifying existing agreements, we have a letter of credit facility that supports our variable rate 2019 Series C bonds with Bank of America. The drawdowns under this facility are subject to a variable interest rate index known as the Bloomberg Short-Term Bank Yield or Index, or BSBY. We've never drawn down on this facility, but in the event that we did, that index would inform as to what interest rate we would pay. Well, the administrator of BSBY has informed us that they're no longer going to support that index after November of 2024. And so basically we have language in this resolution that will authorize us to work with Bank of America to identify an alternate index. Back in December of last year, the prior GRU board adopted a resolution that approved extension of the four revolving lines of credit that you see on this slide. The proposed resolution has language that addresses a couple of things. Number one, in the spirit of belts and suspenders, there's language in this resolution that ratifies the action that was taken by the prior board. Just in the world we're in right now, we're making sure when we have the opportunity, we're covering the decisions that were made by the original board. It also delegates authority to the CEO to amend or extend those existing agreements, and to draw down on the 2022 Series A and B lines of credit to fund emergency reserves in an amount not to exceed $75 million at any one time. The 22A and the 22B they're $150 million. That's a $150 million revolving line of credit. It's broken into two series because we structured it such that we can make a determination at the time we need the money as to whether we do it on a taxable or tax-exempt basis. Single line of credit, but two potential different uses, and it'll allow the CEO to draw down on an emergency basis. And I mentioned, finally, that we're trying to capitalize on an opportunity to generate some debt service savings. This resolution authorizes us to enter into a forward-starting swap on our 2017A bonds. It's a method to lock in existing swap rates in 2024 until the transaction qualifies as a current refunding in 2027. So when we reach the call date on these 17A bonds, the initial call date in 2027, we'll have the option to either keep the swap in place and issue variable rate debt to refund the fixed rate 2017 bonds, or if we believe it's in our best interest, to terminate the swap and issue new fixed rate debt to refund the old bonds. And this transaction is subject to some execution parameters. In other words, even though you provide that authorization tonight for us to execute this, if the transaction that we're looking at doesn't generate net present value savings that are at least 5% of the par amount of the refunded bonds, we can't do it, even though you provide the authorization. And it's got to be traded before August 30th of 2025. So if we still think we want to do this, but we haven't consummated by August 30th of next year, we'll have to come back to the board and get another authorization. This is just a recap. The two tables on the top are just some details about the bonds that we intend to defease or redeem, the specific maturities. And then the bottom section is a repeat of the slide you saw earlier where we project what we're going to actually defease this year. And that's it. The recommendation is that the board adopt the resolution and authorize the CEO to negotiate and execute the transactions within the prescribed execution parameters and timeframes that are in the resolution. So that's it.
Thanks, Mark.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2024-557 as stated.
Have a motion
I'll second that motion.
and a second. Public comment?
Mr. Chair, Jim Conish, I don't pretend to be able to comprehend this. I hope you do, and you probably do, but this bond council and all the people that Ed wins awards from, like Goldman Sachs, who essentially looted the entire country at one point, what are we going to spend on all these casino-like transactions with all kinds of risk all over the place? How much are we going to spend? And how much are we going to save? And those savings are speculative. We have no numbers at all. Moreover, this bond council is working for NE, and NE is in no man's land legally. He's just so far out there that you're going to ask the Attorney General if you can have Mr. Walker actually tell you what the law is rather than have Mr. Nee deny what the law is. So I just don't really know what you're doing, and I hope you do. Thanks.
I'm Donald Shepard, and I'm a Republican. And November is going to be a rude awakening to the city of Gainesville and to GRU. All this money that you're hoping to take and get, you may not be getting it. This is all going to be approved or disapproved by the government of Donald Trump, whom I support. This city has, for 50-some years, excuse the language, but RAP, this city and the people of the city. Now it's even doing it again. It's not only the parents, but it's the children, the ones that really hurt by this additional money coming out of the taxpayers' money. Where is the consent of the education, common sense of the board to take and make such an additional financial move like this, and then not think of the kids that are out there that their parents can't even buy them a bicycle, can't even buy them a pair of shoes. We had a woman come in here tonight in this GRU building who was a homeless person. We have people who are in wheelchairs at the Grace Marketplace. That money could have been for that. That money could have been for the public workers who, for years, have been using old equipment, along with the GRU employees have been using old equipment for years, and said, just deal with it. No, these people need that money that has been allocated to go to them, to help them to have better working conditions and better equipment to do the jobs they're expected. Another thing I didn't hear is about what is Cox infrastructure about what they did? The internet was out. I was on 39th Street, and our internet, our phone, our electric, all was out. Why? Is the question. Why? We still don't know. I myself don't know why it was all out. And I'm not hearing tonight why, what is the reason why all that was out, all these customers being without. Where was the backup plan in 2007 that was supposed to go in to stop this to happen? I haven't heard what y'all did to take and preserve that. There was a talk about the batteries. There was a talk about putting in extra, sir? Time? Okay. But none of this has happened, sir. So, thank you.
Thank you. Bring it back to the board.
Could I interject something here? And Claudia can come up. I think she's been really led the effort on debt defeasance here. And this is an example of the success that GR has had above and beyond a fairly aggressive debt defeasance program where we're looking at $350 million over the next decade. So I want the board to understand that this is about paying down debt that is costing us money, and we're being able to pay down more aggressively than what we thought and still keep rates where they are in a period of high inflation. That's an incredible accomplishment, and it's on, not the backs, but through the efforts of budget, finance, and accounting, which, some people have said about how complicated our debt structure is. It absolutely is. And there's a reason why we pay so much attention to doing what we're doing, because that's where we can get the most bang for the buck. So we do have sophisticated debt structures, but managing it comes with the ability to pay it down judiciously and help other parts of the operation. So, but before I let you talk about it, Claudia, I do want to mention I didn't win an award from Goldman Sachs. I won an award. The company won an award for the deal of the year in 2013 when we did a concession agreement up in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. It was a one-of-a-kind situation, and it was done by Bond Buyer. It's the paper of record on Wall Street. It wasn't through Goldman Sachs. And the deal with the biomass plant was also nominated by Bond Buyer for the deal of the year. So, no, I didn't get an award from Goldman Sachs. Go ahead, Claudia.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow that. So I just wanted to point out that the debt defeasance plan is working because, I'm sorry, Tracy, could you bring that back up? Or communications? Thank you. So if you look at that second table, our scheduled principal paydowns were $35 million. And we're paying down 79. So that is unheard of in GRU's history. So that is principal in which we will not be paying interest on after these payments. So this is a pretty big deal. And so congratulations to the authority and to GRU and all of our advisors, bond counsel, et cetera, that helped us get here because it's a stepping stone in this process to bringing this debt down.
The room is empty, though.
I noticed. But I just wanted for the record, because this will end up, so hopefully in the media, that GRU did do something as far as the debt. And this is unheard of. It really is. So when you look back at the history of GRU and the principal payments, they're in the 20-30-ish range, going back decades. We've never been in the 79. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you. Good job, Mark.
Okay, comments from the board?
I know we all met with the staff, and I love how they explain it to us because this is not our daily grind. That is theirs. And I've worked with Mark and Claudia back when I was a city commissioner. Again, sort of like Mr. Volarski, I trust them. I have to trust them. And when I ask a question, they can defend it with an answer. And that's all I ask of you. And thank you so much for what you guys are doing and not getting credit for it.
Yes. One of the things I also want to bring up is, I don't think Mr. Benton emphasized it enough, is some of these are lines of credit that we have not drawn down. These are in cases of emergency. And much like people that play the credit card game, this is basically what we're doing, is we're looking for that zero balance transfer, to put it in common terms. Then who wouldn't take their outstanding debt and roll it over to a zero for X amount of months? So that's what we're looking to authorize them to do, is look at these different bonds, look at their rates, and if it's a 5% or more savings, then they could make the decision without having us to hold it up, and then all of a sudden, that variable rate changes on us, or that fixed rate changes on us, and now we're in more debt, or could possibly go to a deeper debt hole. So I want to make sure that people understood that concept.
Any other comments? Would we need a roll call?
Yes, sir. This is a roll call vote. Director Skinner?
Yes.
Director Carter?
Yes.
Vice Chair Haslam?
Yes.
Chair Lawson?
Yes.
Thank you. That is a all-4 vote. Our next item on the agenda is the business discussion items, beginning with 2024-593 financial update, October 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024.
And Mark, yeah, I watched you walk away and went, what, are you just putting in your resignation or what? I wasn't sure at that moment. But I will introduce this next item. Staff has been working, our professionals, I said staff. I hate saying staff. Our professionals have been working on a dashboard that can make the board's decision-making more understandable. You get hit with the thick financial statements that we have that are regulated, and you have to carve your way through it. So we were looking at a way to give you updated financial information on a more digestible manner, and actually using terms like profit. You got business people up here, and this is the free money that not the free money, but the money that we have earned. And then we're going to use terms like surplus and deficit. And, I think it's a good first start at engaging with the board on this type of information. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark. Although I will say that Mark had some pretty nifty graphs and charts that I went, I don't know, it doesn't. So I think he's holding him in abeyance for later, that he might show you some more of his nifty chart-making skills.
We'll have lunch.
The adjective nifty is rarely used in accordance with anything that I put together, so I'll take what I can get from Ed. But this is an informational item. I'm gonna hit the highlights in the first couple of slides. If you've got questions, I'll be glad to address them, but I'm not gonna take up a lot of your time here. Basically, the takeaway from this is that at June 30, 2024, our budget is tracking pretty closely with the actuals. Our revenues net of fuel are about 1.5% over budget. Our expense net of fuel and depreciation is a little more than 3% under budget. Our sales volumes in each system are somewhere between 1% under and 1% over where we projected they were going to be. The only real anomalies in the June 30 numbers that you see are related to GRUCOM, and they're associated with the trunk radio system sale. We've got reduced revenue and operating expense numbers associated with the fact that system wasn't functioning under GRU. And we have some increased non-operating revenues associated with the gain on the sale of those trunk radio assets. So these are the numbers that the CEO was talking about, and just to go to the bottom line, you'll see that in 24, June 30, 24, we've got the actuals at June 30, 22, 23, the actuals at 24, and then the budget at 24. But what you'll see here is that the income before capital contributions and transfers, what we're calling profit, and then the surplus after the GFT are significantly higher in June of 24 than they were in the previous 2 years. That's planned. It's driven by the significant primarily by the significant GFT reductions. And it's planned, and why I say it's planned is because that extra profit is going to the debt defeasance that we've been talking about. And this graph shows you what we were defeasing in the prior two years and what we had put into the defeasance pool by June 30 of 2024. So those are just the highlights. The rest of the presentation, the rest of the slides, I won't go through unless you just want me to. They're individual systems. These are the roll-ups into the combined system. If anybody's got any questions, or if you've, we've talked about before, if you have anything that, a different format that you want to see, a different metric that you want to talk about, obviously, as Ed said, this is a flexible tool, and we'll modify it as we go forward.
Mark, have you run into any unexpected issues this year, any unexpected repairs and maintenance, or anything that was material?
Nothing significant on the O&M side. I mean, we always have a couple of bobbles on the capital side that we don't anticipate. I think we're at about, on the capital side, we're at about 60%. Yeah, a little less than 60% of the capital budget expended at June 30. That's not unusual. We tend to have a fourth quarter effect where we ramp up our capital spending a little bit there, but we're probably on track to be slightly under what we have in the capital budget for 24. But on the O&M side, like I said, the biggest anomaly was related to the fact that we had the trunk radio system sale in Grucon.
Yeah, I would ask the board to focus on the fact that this surplus that's being created, if you go back to the other slide, Mark, to the combined systems, if there's anyone out there that thinks that the GFT has very little to do with the health of the utility, all they need to do is look at this one in the very bottom right corner. When you look at that surplus or deficit in fiscal year 24, when that number went down precipitously, all of a sudden GRU went from operating at a deficit to operating at a surplus. And what did that do for us? It allowed us to move forward with keeping rates as where they were. So it directly affected the customers of GRU. And this doesn't even project 2025 that will even be lower. And as Mark said, what does that number do? It allows, debt defeasance, but then we also have utility rates to be kept constant while in a period of high inflation. And then we also have money that we can invest back in the business. So, I mean, this tells the tale in that bottom right corner. And it's interesting if you take the time to look at the electric system, water and wastewater, you can see, the lion's share of the strength of the electric system when you pull that GFT, GSC, I know that, but I'm old school, I say GFT. So I'd love to see this, on a regular basis, and then we're going to come back and try to come up with key performance indicators for each one of our areas so that you can look at where the progress is, or if there isn't progress and you say, hey, we want to see something here. So that's what this is all about.
Thanks for your hard work on this. It's very easy to understand. It's easy for us to digest and enables us to ask questions. So I appreciate your effort in putting this together, Mark. Thank you.
And it's nice to see actuals.
It is that nice to see actuals. We have been asking for that. Anyone else have any other questions?
Thank you, Chair Lawson. The next item on the agenda is 2024-599, GRUA's opinion request to Florida Attorney General. The recommendation is the GRU authority authorize the chair to execute the attached letter requesting an opinion from the Florida Attorney General along with all needed administrative forms.
Yes, we have considered the fact that the board has been seeking some clarity for some time. What is happening with the referendum. And we believe that at this point, to gain that extra clarity, we need the board to vote on this letter that the chair can execute to send to the Florida Attorney General. Now, there's no guarantee that the Attorney General will weigh in on this. They're not obligated by any law to do this. But I don't think that should stop us from asking the question one way or the other. So it basically asks two questions, and one is related to the impact of the proposed referendum on the city on the special act. That special act being House Bill 1645, and the authority's ability to hire independent general counsel. I think they're pretty clearly stated in the letter, if you had a chance to look at it, and there are some, I think, very good guidance in that letter. So I'm requesting that the board consider it, make a motion, and approve it so that the chair can sign this.
Mr. Chair. Unless somebody else raise their hand.
You're too good at this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm getting all seasoned here. Again, I'm not an attorney, and this is, right up there with the audits and everything. I just want to make sure, and I believe you guys are happy with the questions, the way it's phrased. It'll be clear to the Attorney General what we're seeking and everything.
I think Attorney Kinney has done a wonderful job. I think it's very well crafted. I think it's very clear.
Okay.
It will be clear to Ashley Moody what the questions are, in my belief. And so, yes, I think it's very, very appropriately drafted.
Okay, and then I did, we have someone from Chuck's office, we'd like to get an opinion as fast as possible if we can get some encouragement. So anyhow, I'd like to make a motion at this time that we adopt 2024-599 as stated.
I'll second it.
We have a motion.
Uh-oh.
We also authorized the chair to sign it.
I thought that was stated in the request.
Is it?
But,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's got him on here.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I think we're covered, right?
okay, got it.
Why are you messing with my motion?
I'm sorry.
So we have
I
a
didn't mean
motion
to interrupt. I'm
and
so
a
sorry.
second.
You're gonna put up with this?
Public comment?
Let's go back to the.
Yeah, what if we start over here?
Mr. Chair, Jim Conish. We already have a couple of these Attorney General opinion letters out, I believe, one or two, and maybe they'll answer, maybe they won't answer. These answers are non-binding. There's, of course, a lot of politics because they have an R, and people out here, when they have a D, they think they're their enemy. So it would have really no effect in terms of stopping the rogue legal assault on the power of the state of Florida by people that swore to uphold the state constitution. For you to sit there and not have Mr. Walker haul the supervisor into court so a judge could tell her to label this as the straw ballot it actually is, if you don't do that, you are guilty of profound misfeasance, malfeasance, and nonfeasance, and you will own the chaos and confusion that will attend the passage of something that's void right out of the gates. And I would respectfully add to Mr. Walker's legal analysis that provision in 7.10 that anything that conflicts with Article 7 is void. That Chuck knew they were going to try this, and it's prohibited. It's just right there. It's just unambiguous. Why go through all this problem if they could just run to the local voters and wipe it off the books? Why don't they go down and have a referendum and just get rid of the abortion ban? Get rid of open carry. Anytime the legislature does something you don't want, have a bunch of crackpots rally their base, throw them red meat, and just strike down any state legislation. So this Attorney General opinion letter is weak. It's pathetic. If you've been on vacation for 3 of the last 5 weeks, I can see how this could be the only thing you can come up with. But it sickens me that Mr. Bilarski has independent legal counsel, but he's more interested in the politics of the situation than having Mr. Walker protect the ratepayers who will suffer if you do nothing and this passes. We're going to suffer, and you guys are going to be to blame. Thank you.
Thanks.
Standing here trying to think of all the things I wanted to talk about. I'd like a copy of what is proposed. I don't know if it's feasible, but I'd like a copy of what has been stated here tonight. If we're going to get a paper copy of it, I think that'd be a polite thing to do. What I've heard from the lady and Mr. Mark Benton, it opened my ears towards the bill that is owed to GRU, the bills that are owed to others. I didn't hear how they answered that, how they paid that off. I'd like to see that. And there's so much that is behind the scene that needs to be validated to the customers and residents such as myself, that is a person who was running for office for city mayor, and has been pushed aside by votes of the Democratic Party. This woman who is in the election office should be removed from office because of what she did. She went against the Constitution. And if the mayor and the staff don't see that, then we're going to be pointing it out in November. I'm saying we, meaning the Republican Party. And my goal was to take over the city of Gainesville and make it a Republican city so that we can take and have a validated city instead of a hidden city. Gainesville has been a hidden city for years, and we can make it a validated city that is being seen. And how can we do that? By our airport and by our public works and by our electric companies. Those key things are the validations of our city and our hospitals. There's many more, but I can't think of them all and don't have the time. But I want to thank y'all for what y'all have done, and that I'm a man of honor and pride. And anybody knows me, I'm a facts person. And so anything I say has to be a fact. And so I thank you for this and for all you've done.
Thank you. Okay, back to the board.
I did have a question. We had asked a letter to be sent to the supervisor of elections. Did we get any response from them as of yet?
The only response that we have received is an indication that they did receive our letter.
I do, he's not here, so I can agree with him. No. My question has been, and that was the reason for the original letter to the supervisor, if we believe she's not able to do this, or it's a straw vote, or it's something else, do we have an avenue to, proactively go after that prior to the November election, or the voting?
I believe we do. My belief is that you would have an ability to file an action potentially, and probably it would be found in declaratory relief, requesting that this measure be deemed improper. And so we've been researching that question, and actually there's a case out of Orlando with the Orlando utility that has some similarity to this particular situation as well, where it was deemed that it was advisory with respect to the city of Orlando, advisory to OUC, and not binding on OUC.
Mr. Chair, my approach would be to have several avenues at the same result. So if this is something the board can instruct the attorneys to do, I would encourage that, because let's go from opinions, because we were put in this position to represent the ratepayers as it says up there, the people they serve. I don't think that we're doing our job if we don't attack this with a lot of energy. So if we, you can either ask them to do it or have the CEO, or we can make a vote, however you want to do it. But I would like to explore all options to circumvent this.
Do we have legal standing to file?
I believe we do. That'd probably be the first issue that would be for litigation as to whether or not we would have standing. My opinion is we do have legal standing, so yes.
Do we need a motion to?
I think we're already engaged in that process. Your GM and CEO has instructed us to work in that direction already. We can bring back some information to you perhaps at the next meeting.
I'm good with that, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I figured there was something.
And I agree with you. We
Yeah.
need to go in every round.
Yeah.
I'd say every round we
Multi-pronged.
can take, let's
Yeah.
take it, and then we can leak, in public, so we can look everybody in the eye. So we do what you asked us to do.
So just to provide some clarity, just for our office, we will put together some additional information for you. I'll provide you with what we believe that the grounds would be for a suit in this. And then before we file any action, we will need a vote from the board.
So we're gonna wait a month?
We can
Can we
provide
not
it, we can
authorize-
provide it to you before then, but
Do
before
we
we
not
file.
authorize the CEO to act, or the chairman to act on our behalf? Or does it have to be a vote from the board?
I would prefer a vote from the board. We
I'd be
can
willing to
call-
drive here to make that vote. I don't wanna wait a month.
I think if you can come up with something, then Ed, you can circulate and find a date and give
Yeah.
the proper notice.
Yep.
And we could come
Yeah.
together just for that.
I would
think
love it.
we're all willing to do that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the faster, the better. Thank you,
Yeah,
Chairman.
I don't mind putting together a special meeting just for that topic.
Thank you.
Okay, so vote on the current motion for the, sending the letter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I don't think this is a roll call vote because it's not a resolution. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is director comments.
Let's start at this end. I just want to address some of the comments out there. Mr. Conish, looks like he has left. But we have not forgotten about the SLA losses. They are out there. That is low-hanging fruit, as well as GRUCOM. We've had discussions with Mr. Bilarski. I know I have, at least, about both of those items. So that is on our radar. We haven't forgotten about it, but we can't tackle every problem from the get-go. We have to take pieces and work through the process, because then we have other items that we have to educate ourselves on and really digest. So we're taking this very systematically. So you will be hearing more about GRUCOM, and you are going to be hearing more about those SLA agreements. That's it.
Couple of things, I wish more people were here. So I've updated people that my son was in an accident, he broke his back, and he's flying again, which is unbelievable that my son, and ironically, he's in Italy, right where he broke his damn back, in his F-35, so he's back in action. But, you alluded to it in your prayer, Director. There's some anger going out here, but when I announced my son was hurt, someone that wrote me a couple of emails that I wouldn't let my grandmother read, emailed me and said, man, I hope your son's okay. I'm thinking about it. Followed it up with another email, how's he doing? So our passion, we get upset, okay? But at the end of the day, I think we're all still friends and we have a good goal, but I just want to thank everybody that's asked about my son, and I'm ecstatic, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm glad your son's all right, man. It's really important to me. Anytime someone's injured, something like that, and your kid should never be injured. As far as I'm concerned, it's a horrible thing. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people already left. Yeah, no, we're all passionate about this. I think the passions are possibly going in different directions. I know personally, I want what's best for GRU and best for Gainesville. And I think maybe some of the people in the community too, I think that's what they're trying to say. We just have different opinions on how to get there. Right now though, while we're authority, we're gonna, do what we think's best. Yes, with some of the opinions, but when the opinions are hateful or a waste of time or bullying or regurgitating things that we've moved past, I feel like it's a bit of waste of time, and maybe that's where some of my aggression comes out. Let's business, let's fix what we can fix, let's move to the next things that we can take care of, you know? We all live here, you know, we're gonna continue to live here. We don't wanna be threatened or anything silly like that. That's unnecessary. We are a community. Let's act like a community. Let's talk, let's email each other, whatever. We got 200 emails this week already, so, but that's all I would say about that.
Thanks, David. So I'll finish with just saying, thank all the members for all your hard work, all the work that you put into getting up to speed, and Ed and his team for all that you did to make this a successful meeting. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.